Welcome to your Daily Detroit for Tuesday, January 21st, 2020. I'm Sven Gustafson.
And I'm Jer Stays. Welcome back from the holiday weekend. There is a lot going on, so let's just get right to it.
Last week on this show, we told you how a Capitol reporter up in Lansing alleged that State Senator Peter Lucido of Shelby Township made a sexist remark to her while she tried to interview him. Now, a fellow state senator of Lucido's said she's filing a workplace sexual harassment complaint against him. State Senator Mallory McMorrow tells Crain the incident took place in November 2018 after she was first elected to her seat representing the 13th District in Oakland County. McMorrow, a Democrat from Royal Oak, said she introduced herself to Lucido, a Republican, at an orientation event for newly elected senators. She said Lucido shook her hand but kept his other hand on her lower back throughout the conversation. When McMorrow told him that she had defeated an incumbent Republican, she said Lucido looked her up and down and told her, "I can see why."
McMorrow said she stayed silent because she was a freshman senator and Lucido was a former member of the state house who had just been elected to a state senate seat in the majority party. Her account was partly backed up by a fellow Senate lawmaker who witnessed Lucido's hand on her lower back. Lucido told Crain the allegation was, quote, completely untrue and politically motivated, unquote.
The news comes a week after Michigan Advance reporter Allison Donahue reported that Lucido told her in front of a group of Catholic schoolboys, quote, "You could have a lot of fun with these boys, or they could have a lot of fun with you," end quote. The Senate Business Office is investigating that incident upon request of Senate leaders from both parties. Lucido is a licensed attorney who served 2 terms in the state house before being elected to the state senate in 2018. He has been widely thought to be considering a run for governor.
A lot of people have been talking online about how much money has been raised by recreational marijuana in Michigan in its first 6 weeks. And of course, we also chatted about it on this very show. More than $10 million in sales and about $1.7 million in taxes. However, a new report from Steve Neveling at the Metro Times puts this all in perspective, that in fact, Michigan has been far behind other states in recreational marijuana sales early on. For instance, Illinois. There, it took just 5 days to sell what Michigan did in 6 weeks.
There are quite a few reasons for this, including the fact that Michigan has a very limited number of licensed dispensaries that are actually open. Also, as we've talked about here on the show, 80% of cities have opted out of selling recreational marijuana altogether. That means no dispensaries and no shared revenue for those places.
Slowly, Michigan is bringing new dispensaries online. The first licensed medical marijuana dispensary in Wayne County has opened. First Quality Meds, with a Z, in River Rouge. The next closest one? Ann Arbor. The city of Detroit is a place where an overwhelming majority of residents voted for legalized marijuana. However, they're extending their temporary ban on dispensaries through at least March. The vote by City Council was unanimous as it works on a city-specific social equity program.
Jared, it's really interesting how so many communities, at least voters in the communities, wanted marijuana to be legal, and yet, people don't want it sold in their communities. It's like NIMBYism at its finest.
Well, I mean, for sure. I mean, you look at that in the city of Detroit. Royal Oak's wrestling with this problem, too. Royal Oak overwhelmingly wanted recreational and medical marijuana. But there's a big debate now. Okay, do we want them on Woodward Avenue? Is that something that they want to have? It's amazing how many of these communities, I feel like there's just this huge disconnect between leadership and what people want. And that Illinois example, I wanted to pull it out because it's so crazy to me. You'd think if we had our ducks in a row, we'd have so much more money in the coffers.
Yeah. I keep going back to kind of the cultural obstacles that marijuana has to overcome, and it's going to take a long time. I mean, this was a drug that was totally demonized going way back to the founding of this country. It was associated with immigrants, with people of color, essentially. I mean, it was used as a racist cudgel. Yeah, absolutely. It was just socially ostracized. You did not want people to know that you smoked marijuana. And it's I'm a father of 2 kids, and I think about it all the time. It's marijuana is basically on par now, at least legally, with alcohol. So, but it's going to take a long time until we can kind of equate the two substances, marijuana is no different really than drinking. You just have to be 21 and, abide by other rules. But, it's going to take a long time. Like there's a lot of social stigma that needs to kind of evaporate. And it might take a couple generations, I think, frankly.
Well, and I think that stigma is probably affecting those politicians' responses.
The Ilitch family has made a proposal to the city in which it would hand over 2 properties it owns in exchange for an extension on a deadline to submit a new development plan for property it owns in the district Detroit. Olympia Development has been criticized heavily, including on this podcast, for the slow pace of development in the district Detroit, which is today mostly surface parking lots. Under the deal, it would get until September 2022 to submit plans for the parcel just south of Little Caesars Arena, where it had originally planned to build a hotel and retail stores. In exchange, the city will get 2 open lots, one in Brush Park and the other in Midtown, that it would convert to public parks. The plan must first be approved by the city council.
Sven, I know I have things. I know you have things.
My thinks is, we've talked a lot about the District Detroit and its failings on this show. A lot of taxpayer money went to, this whole idea of the District Detroit and the Little Caesars Arena and everything. And there's, we've got surface parking lots.
And I'd point out, we were actually part of that earlier tranche of criticism because we're right around it all the time.
Yeah. I would say that the Ilitches are supposedly floating these new figures of like jobs, construction jobs and full-time permanent jobs that would go along with this, extended deadline. Okay, fine, whatever. They don't have a great track record on delivering on these things in the past. Going way back to well before the District Detroit. This is their first opportunity, one opportunity at least, to extract a pound of flesh from the Ilitches out of this deal. I think, okay, it's well and good to get 2 parcels to make into parks, but let's start putting some teeth into these agreements. I think the city needs to take its time and really come up and say, how can we build in some assurances that they're going to do what they say here and come out, with some actual tangible benefits to the city?
Well, especially going forward, as this deal, the first District Detroit deal was, I believe, done under bankruptcy, and so this was not done by the current administration. I will note that Duggan says that he believes that this is a good deal.
Right.
I wonder what the actual market demand is for those properties, right? So if this property trade is a good deal, he's seeing things behind the scenes that maybe we are or aren't. If there were a bunch of suitors and somebody wanting to drop a bunch of money on this land, I wonder if he would take that, or did he look at this and go, well, parks is the best we're going to get right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Vegan restaurant Greenspace Cafe has announced it will close its flagship sit-down restaurant in downtown Ferndale after 4 years in business. The restaurant says the closure is due to a combination of issues with the building's landlord, leases, and finances. The last day of business will be February 1st. Greenspace opened to much fanfare, offering a plant-based menu and a full cocktail bar in a renovated space. The owner is Dr. Joel Kahn, a cardiologist who has become an advocate for following a vegan diet. In a Facebook post, Greenspace said it made a measurable impact in terms of animal lives, water, and CO2 saved. Quote, alas, the healthy plant food market is still tiny, if vibrant and growing, end quote. The carry-out-oriented Greenspace and Go fast casual concept on Woodward in Royal Oak will remain open. Sven, you're the healthiest eater among us by far. Do you have some recommendations for those who are left without?
Yeah, where to get vegan in Detroit? Yeah, I sure do. Detroit Vegan Soul. Jerry, you and I have had lunch over there in West Village. Good spot.
Very good, very good.
Very, very good quality food. Cacao Tree in Royal Oak, right next to the railroad tracks downtown there.
Oh, I haven't tried that one.
Another really good spot. I've only been there once, but I had like a burrito. There's a lot of raw food on the menu there, but it was fantastic. Like really good fresh food. I remember Joe Hakeem from back in the Hungry Dudes days. Tipped me off to that place, and I saw a tweet from him that said that he swore by that place, and so I tried it. And it was good. Staying in Royal Oak, one of my favorite restaurants, period, like meat or otherwise, is In Season Cafe. I love that restaurant. I think they do a fantastic job. It's a fairly small menu, but everything they make is just like you can taste the love in the food. It's fresh, well-prepared food, very flavorful, very tasty. Head back downtown. There's Seva, of course, in the Midtown.
I'm all about that General Tso's cauliflower.
Yeah, Seva is good. It's the Detroit outpost of a longtime Ann Arbor vegetarian staple restaurant. It's been in business since I think the 70s, if I remember correctly. Also, the only recommendation off the top of my head that has a full bar.
Which is always a good thing.
I used to be vegetarian for many years. I was never vegan, but I was vegetarian. And, we're blessed in the Detroit area with a wealth of Middle Eastern restaurants, which is a very vegetarian-friendly cuisine, as is Indian. And there's a lot of good Indian restaurants in parts of Metro Detroit anyway. I think Indian food is largely vegetarian to begin with, and it's super flavorful vegetarian food. So I don't think that Greenspace leaves a desert or a void necessarily. I haven't been there. My wife was a big fan of Greenspace. I'm going to try to get in there before they close because it has been on my list. I know she's upset about it because she really liked that place.
You're talking about Indian food. I got to give a new recommendation recently discovered by me, but I have multiple friends who vouch for this place. It's actually in Northville, across from the Sheraton out there.
Okay.
All right. It's called Dhaba Indian Cuisine, and it is in a BP gas station of all places.
Nice.
And it's got a wide variety of dishes. They're well executed. It's a total carry-out place. I guess there's a couple of chairs that are shared with the gas station. Here's the deal. And you know that I love this combination of the gas station.
It's such a Detroit
cuisine.
thing. Yeah.
It's so Detroity. Tasty Burgers in Dearborn. There's a bunch of places. It's so quintessentially Metro Detroit.
Well, then if you're a fan of that, check out Mr. Kebab in Berkeley. I'm not sure what the gas station it's affiliated with is. I've never been there, but I've had their food, and because a friend of mine is a huge fan of it, and it is indeed worthwhile for sure. Mr. Kebab in Berkeley.
Detroit is a desirable place to be, according to a recent poll of 1,000 Americans. A website called The Storage Space says they commissioned a poll asking people if they could move anywhere in the country, where would they move to in 2020? On the list of 20 cities, Detroit at number 18. And that's going to be right between Albuquerque, New Mexico at 17 and Bozeman, Montana at 19, which I've learned in the intervening time of first finding this out, that Bozeman is apparently growing like crazy. Like who knew?
It must be all the people moving there to be dental floss tycoons. You ever heard that Frank Zappa song?
Oh my God.
From 1971, I think, 70, 71. Anyway.
Now, the reason given to move to the city, because, and this is a direct quote, it's perfect for hipsters.
So what's that mean?
I'm not sure. Does that mean that are you counting all people who like pour overs? Because then I think we're both hipsters. What does that mean exactly? I have no idea.
I don't know. Is Bozeman good for hipsters too? Or Albuquerque?
But here's the thing I have learned, Sven, in the intervening time. Facebook commenters do not like hipsters.
Okay.
Storage Space cites greater downtown's low comparative rent to other big cities, which, although $1,075 is high for most current city residents, and let's just face it, most Metro Detroiters, it's a bargain for New Yorkers and others who are used to paying a lot more for a lot less in square footage. I mean, Sven, you and I have both been through New York and other places. Prices are much higher there. I mean, you can get a place for certain amounts of money, but you're going to get tiny little places.
Allow me to introduce myself. I represent the Rent is Too Damn High Party.
Anecdotally, when I lived in Midtown a couple of years ago, it seemed like pretty much every new neighbor, Sven, that was moving in wasn't from the burbs, and in fact, the people who would tour rentals in other places, if they were from the burbs, normally they would settle on Grosse Pointe or Ferndale or Dearborn or something. But the folks moving in, they were from New York, Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco, that kind of thing. I know that's completely anecdotal, but it's just something I've noticed being here. And a lot of those folks were moving in for jobs that say Quicken, or some people that we know, actually, they were keeping their West or East Coast salary and living in Detroit,
working remotely.
Yeah, which gives you a huge economic advantage around here.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the story, I got to praise them for shout outs to Standby, The Skip, Astro Coffee, and Batch Brewing. What I'm about to say is no knock against them. I actually enjoy those places quite a bit.
But there's more to the city than just those places.
I mean, there's so much more to the city than those four that always keep getting written up. Anyway, rounding out the top 3 on the list are Franklin, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, which by the way apparently is good for singles, and the top billing goes to Hilo, Hawaii, which sounds amazing looking at the multiple inches of snow outside my window right now.
Atlanta and Hilo make sense. I have to Google where Franklin, Tennessee even is. That's a new one for me.
I'm going to guess Tennessee.
It looks like it's a suburb of Nashville. I guess maybe,
that makes sense.
Maybe Nashville's gotten too
expensive?
Too bougie.
Ooh.
And finally, the authority that oversees the TCF Center is putting out the call for proposals from artists for a large-scale public sculpture in front of the convention facility. The Detroit Regional Convention Facility Authority Art Foundation launched the national competition for a permanent sculpture. It's offering $250,000 to support the project, plus $50,000 for the winning artist. The sculpture would be installed at the main entrance Circle Drive on Washington Boulevard in downtown Detroit. Preferred themes would reflect the growth and positive changes taking place in Detroit, the spirit of innovation and design, or Detroit's global impact. Proposals will be reviewed by a jury with 3 finalists invited to create a small preliminary model or sketch, that's called a maquette, of their design for final selection. There's a mandatory on-site meeting at TCF, which was formerly known as Cobo Center, on March 1st. We'll put a link to more information in the show notes.
You know, Sven, of all the names that we've done recently, the Detroit Regional Convention Facility Authority Art Foundation is among the most tongue-twisting. I mean, try saying that 4 times in a row, or we could just call it Dirkfaff.
And with that, we're done. Thanks to our new members on Patreon, including Zach, Clayton, and Bob. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
Very cool. A reminder that just a few bucks a month helps keep independent media humming here in Detroit, and you can join them and support the show at patreon.com/dailydetroit. We'll always keep the show free for all, but your support is crucial to making it happen. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
Are you saying the show is a free-for-all or it's free for all?
I mean, we just talked about the Dirkfaff.
I'm Sven Gustafson. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around Detroit.